Hey Last Looks crew, Anne Morgan. The exceptionally talented hairstylist and wig wrangler extraordinaire joins us on the show today. With a diverse background in salon work, stage productions, and film, Morgan brings a wealth of experience to the table. She honed her skills in Texas, where she worked with renowned hairdressers and immersed herself in the punk rock and new wave scene. Eventually, Morgan made her way to Los Angeles, where she pursued her passion for fashion and styling. I met Anne Morgan back in 2018 when I interviewed with her for the assistant department head position for the film Bombshell. I took away so much from my experience on that project and will forever be grateful. The makeup and hair designers for the film cleaned up awards season with Bombshell, adding an Oscar and BAFTA awards to their career highlights. In this rerun episode, we dive deep into the art of hair and wig styling, discussing techniques, challenges, and everything in between. We chat about the importance of setting professional boundaries for self-care and work-life balance, ensuring you don't burn out in this fast-paced industry. Now, I hope you have been enjoying our rerun episodes. This is our last one for now, as we will be kicking into Season 8 on December 4th. If I may say so myself, as per usual, I have some fan-fucking-tastic guests lined up for you. Plus, some informational and fun bonus episodes and some minisodes as well. Plenty of content to keep you guys entertained. And a reminder on all the ways you can help support the podcast and keep this little guy chugging along. So number 1, rate and write a review. And if you do that, take a screenshot of your review, send it to me with your postal address, and I will get a sticker bundle out to you ASAP. Number 2, if you love it, share it. Share on social media and tell people why you love it. Number 3, buy the podcast a coffee. Link is in the show notes. Number 4, check out our merch store on the website, last-looks.com. and represent Last Looks on set with some swaggerlicious gear. And number 5, purchase your ticket to our Top 10 Talkback live Q&A events we have the first weekend of every month. Jump to it, soldier. Buy your ticket, get your questions in, and lucky for you, we have a promo code for a healthy discount, Last Looks Pod, all one word. Last Looks Pod, all one word. Link is in the show notes, in our bio on Instagram, or on the website. And just by doing one of those 5 things, it helps the podcast greatly. So cheers to you, my Last Looks crew. Listen, if you did all 5, I wouldn't be angry. Now, if you or someone you know has a product or tool that they would like to share with all our Last Looks listeners around the globe, get in touch about advertising on the show. With the new season around the corner and the Oscars special early next year, it is the perfect time. Okay, let's kick into this last rerun episode. My name is Jamie Lee, a hairstylist based in LA, and this is the Last Looks podcast, a show where I catch up with makeup artists and hairstylists working in the film and television industries around the world. And on this rerun episode, we catch up with Anne Morgan. On with the show.
And now, our feature presentation.
Pictures up.
Last Looks. Rolling.
And action.
Welcome back, Morgan.
Thank you, Jamie Lee.
Let's start at the very beginning. Did you always want to be a hairstylist?
Did I always want to be a hairstylist? No, but I will say that when I was in 4th grade, I went to Universal Studios and I got lost from my parents for a little bit. And I ended up like watching somebody do a guy up like Abe Lincoln. I mean, they were shooting something somewhere off stage somewhere. And I waited there until they found me. And it really made a heavy mark in my mind. And my babysitter, Debbie Schumann, she was like, she was going to cosmetology school. And I just thought that was the coolest. She had cool makeup and all this stuff. And I thought that was all really cool. And then I really thought I was going to be a veterinarian, truthfully.
Okay.
But I had a lot of traveling as a teenager. And I will say, like, I was doing my mom's hair when I was like 13 years old when we were living in the Middle East because my mom was trying to get her hair color. It was, so I don't know, there's a lot of little different elements. And, you know, I thought I was going to do makeup actually. And then this is how stupid it is. I got to cosmetology school and my parents were like, well, if you're going to go to cosmetology school, which trust me, they were not, my dad was really not keen, not at all.
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, if you're going to go, then you have to get a job and it has to be in a junior college because, you know, really they thought I was going to bail on that and then go to college for real.
Yeah.
I went to San Jacinto Junior College, which is outside of Houston. My parents were living in Clear Lake by NASA in Texas. And I got there and they were like, yeah, you don't need a license to do makeup. Like, what? What? You could just do it? And then I was like, well, you know, my parents thought I needed to do that. So I did. And I liked it.
Thank goodness.
Okay. Yeah. 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 I have always had a thing about makeup and hair being cohesive. Remember, I went there because I thought I needed to go to school to do makeup. And I had been doing some hair, like I enjoyed it. And I remember that my project at the end was a makeover. And it was this girl that worked in like at a restaurant that my brother worked at. And I remember I did this full makeover and I gave her a perm and we cut it and I did her makeup and like the whole thing. So when I finished school in Texas, I was, you know, still living with my parents. I'm like 19 years old and I get a job at a salon that has a New York hairdresser, Eddie. I can't remember Eddie's last name. He would come in from New York every other weekend to do all the socialites, the Houston socialites, all these blondes. Yeah. And then the guy who owned the salon, his name is Jorge Enrique Ortega. Jorge was Cuban via Spain, via New York, super, super talented, had major hair cutter, probably one of the best hair cutters I could ever think of, like an incredible hairdresser. I went to work for them and like an apprentice program for a year, working under them, washing hair, you know, learning to blow dry, helping set hair, handing Eddie foils, just, like this kind of thing.
Learning every day. It was a little itty bitty salon and I started to be able to take clients, you know, and that kind of thing. And then we got this other salon and Jorge wanted to open a salon that was bigger and purely like new wave punk rock hair. No hot rollers, no brushes. You had to learn to blow dry hair with your hands. And we did clipper cuts and we did extensions. And Tana from London came over, showed us what they were doing. Then we did clipper cut classes for the African American salons in Houston that wanted to learn how to do, you know, the new wave kind of haircuts. And we had an amazing space. It was like 5,000 square feet. We would go to New York for sure 3 or 4 times a year to buy clothes for the punk rock new wave kind of clothing store that we started downstairs, which was me getting to like, so cool. You know, be like, George, we got to buy this, we got to buy that. It was amazing. So we'd spend, you know, debaucherous times in New York in the 80s, so hardcore, so partying. And then coming back to Houston and, you know, having the clothing store downstairs. And we ended up with, I think, 12 or 15 hairdressers upstairs, all really cutting edge. And it was the salon we gave fashion shows at the nightclubs with our clothes and the hair. And we did photo shoots. See, look at that. See, you were doing all 3 things.
That's exactly what happened. And so then I came to LA and wanted to do that. I was doing photo shoots, you know, that would come into town. Also, all the bands that would come to town. Like I remember Depeche Mode coming to town, David Byrne, like all these guys, X. We did their hair. They would come into town cool. And they knew that we were the salon to go to. So if somebody needed their hair done, we would do the hair. So it was great. It was the 80s.
That is pretty awesome. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So that's me working in a salon for 5 years. And then I just really wanted to do fashion. I just really needed to leave Texas. I wanted to go to Los Angeles because I knew about Cloutier. So it was called Celestine Cloutier. I knew about them and I wanted to go and be represented by them. Actually, it was Cloutier, and they started the baby agency Celestine Cloutier for new artists. And that's where I got representation. And
nice.
They were amazing. Angelica Schubert and Anita Castillo. I remember their names well. And I was like, I want to do styling, I want to do makeup, and I want to do hair, all three. And they were like, well, we think you should just do makeup and hair.
Yeah.
Not do styling. It's too many things, which, with benefit of hindsight, when people tell you can't do makeup and hair, or they say to you can't do makeup and hair and styling, well, that's just not true. It's just not true.
Yeah.
It's great that now there's a bigger awareness of like not letting people do that, to doing what you feel comes natural to you, I think, it's more accepted now to be able to just, if you want to do this, so you want to do that, like it's all okay.
Yeah.
And so that's how that started. And when I ultimately left Texas and I moved back to California, my best friend was a model. All I wanted to do was work in fashion at that point. I wasn't even thinking about film. I was just like, the film idea had been, again, I thought I was going to do makeup. I wanted to do fashion. And I had been at school in Switzerland, and that's when I changed my mind. My two best girlfriends were 6 foot tall Italian twins, and they were from Milan, and they used to take me to Como and to Milan on the weekends. And I mean, my exposure to fashion at that time was pretty amazing. It was Fiorucci in its big heyday, and it was like, those two best girlfriends of mine, they wore fur coats and hot pink pumps. And they were amazing.
So it's exciting. Like you want to be a part of all that.
Yeah. So I wanted to do fashion. Yeah.
So, yeah. And then what happens after that?
Working in Los Angeles. So my best girlfriend, the same one who was a model, her boyfriend was a sound mixer on the Michael Jackson tour.
Oh, wow.
So he said, hey, the person that is doing the tour, the makeup and hair for the tour, is looking for someone to go on tour with them that will also do makeup and hair, because they have dancers and singers and, besides Michael, which is, of course, so there's it's a huge job, and it's on the road for a year and a half on the Bad tour, Michael Jackson's Bad tour. So
that's cool.
I met and I got the job, and I went on tour with Michael Jackson.
That's so cool. You're like, I'm going to do fashion. No, I'm over here now. I'm hanging out with Michael and touring the world. That's amazing.
Yeah. It was amazing. And it was probably, the best exposure to any kind of tour life, if you will, because he would do, I think the most shows he would do in a week is 3. And so we would have a lot of days off, and we traveled in business or in first class, either way. We stayed with where the dancers and the singers stayed. And the band. Okay. So because we would have a suite, Karen Faye was Michael Jackson's makeup artist for a very, very long time. And in fact, she did Michael's makeup when he passed. And so she had a very long-standing, deep relationship with Michael. But, Sheryl Crow was a backup singer, and we were on tour at the same time. Prince was on tour, and we were all in Europe together at the same time. And they would come into one city, and we would be leaving, or we'd be in a close by city. And so we would go see them at a club after their show, or it was,
my goodness,
there were so many amazing things, Liz Taylor, Sophia Loren backstage every night when we were in Europe.
Oh my God.
Wow. Standing to the side on the wings while we're standing there touching the dancers. Mostly the dancers would come off and on stage. Yeah. And so we would be standing there with Sophia and Loren and Elizabeth Taylor there. It was amazing, We went to the Palace because Charles and Diana loved Michael Jackson. And so, Yes, they threw us a dinner party, us, as if I was really like who they threw it for, but we were invited.
Yeah, but yes, that's so cool that invitation reached out to everybody.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was great.
Wow. What an experience.
It was. And it was Cheryl when she was a backup singer before she, had done the Tuesday Night Music Club. Was that what her first album was called? I forget. But yeah. So anyway, so then I go on tour with Michael Jackson, come back and continue on this like journey of trying to do fashion. And, Los Angeles is not considered a fashion capital. Certainly it was all about New York, Paris, Milan, London in some ways, but really it was about Paris, Milan, New York. And so, I went to Japan for a little while, for a few months. And then that was when I came back. Lots of music videos. I'd been on tour with Michael, so there were all these like cool Black performers. I remember doing one of, I don't even know what album was for NWA and George Clinton. And like, I don't know. I just got all these calls, and it was amazing. It was amazing. It was a great time.
And just from that one job, then you come back from that tour and it just branches out to all these other people, because it's just like, oh yeah, she's on the Michael Jackson tour. Yeah, she knows what she's doing. All right, let's get her to help us out on this. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I remember getting asked to do the Truth or Dare tour with Madonna. And they wanted you to sign the waiver that said that, you would let them film you. And it was like, a reality show. The tour was basically the film. And I didn't want to sign that. I didn't want to do that. And so I never went back out on tour again, which is cool. I had the best experience it could ever be.
Oh, lady, I think just that one tour situation is enough for a lifetime.
Yeah. It's good.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so that's how that started. And then, like I said, the tour, music videos, commercials, blah, blah, blah. And then just being in LA, you just get asked to work on a movie set.
Yeah. I was going to say, so it starts with music videos and then commercials. And then did you do a film first or television show?
No, I did not do a television show for a really long time. My first foray into film, is I crossed a picket line. No idea what that was. No idea. I just, not a clue. I got called I one night to go the next morning. I did. I showed up and it was a film called Less Than Zero. And that's, Robert Downey Jr. And, oh God, it's just, all the, Brat Packers, like, it's an amazing film. Bret Easton Ellis wrote it. It's classic representation of Los Angeles, the underworld of Los Angeles in the 80s, and the entitlement of, the upper echelon kids and the money, drugs.
And so did you step into that at the very beginning of shooting, or is it because they were needing?
No, because the union had wanted to step in and they wouldn't turn the film union. And so the union was picketing. I wasn't stepping in as a department head. I did not step in a key position. I was just coming in to like do hair. I don't even remember what hair I did. I don't. But,
it's not too exciting. And
no, not because it wasn't exciting. It's just, it's so long ago. And really the first real film that I went to work on was a film in Texas that was the sequel to the Last Picture Show. And it was called Texasville.
Okay.
And that was with Jeff Bridges and Annie Potts and, Timothy Bottoms and Peter Bogdanovich directing. And it was, I want to say it was like 5 or 6 months in Wichita Falls. Outside of Wichita Falls, we stayed, I think. And we shot in Anarene. And it was like the real proper movie experience. And it turned union. Now, I actually, my story of getting into the union took me almost 5 years to get in the union. They did not want to let me in. It was a very closed door at the time. It was not a good experience for me. And it was very they just didn't want to share information. They didn't want to have people in. They weren't interested in what anyone would bring to the table that was not already connected somehow.
Yeah. I don't know if it's that much easier now. mean, it's still difficult. It's still hard. I still talk to people who it's taken them 3 to 10 years to kind of get into. So I think a bit of it has to do with, well, it's definitely hard work, but also a bit of luck. You just need to get on the right thing at the right time. And it's tricky.
It's really tricky. I think that, I don't know now if it's like who you know per se, but certainly who you know can help get you onto a job, say before they've made a deal with the unions. I certainly get hired on jobs before the union deals are set and made, and you can say, I want to bring this person and that person. But, sadly, what we did is they got rid of, an apprentice program that exists, and we don't offer that up. And that would not only give us better hairdressers, but it would give a system that not dissimilar to what happens, in England with this incredible training program and of craftsmanship and reverie for craftsmanship,
Yeah, just being able to work your way up instead of...
And learn.
I mean, I was lucky enough to kind of come up through this industry. We didn't have unions in New Zealand. So my first film job, I was working under Peter Swords King and working with Peter Owen wigs and training like that. Now, that is something that couldn't happen.
It doesn't get any better than that. I mean, that is literally
it couldn't happen in Los Angeles because there's no way I would be able to get anywhere near a job that someone of his caliber is on because of that union wall that is there.
But where did that take place? New Zealand.
Outside of.
Right. So you were a hire in a place that didn't have enough hairdressers that they would have known, right? So, then we go, okay, so we go to Georgia all the time, or we go to Louisiana, North Carolina, or all of these right to work states. The difference is, person to person, there's a difference in a work ethic, and location to location. Like in New Zealand, I would venture to guess there weren't a lot of competitive films that were like vying for you to be on, like he was there. So he was the game, right? So that was, and a total luck of the draw. You have the best training possible, like under the most incredible, hairdresser, wig maker possible. But I don't know why when we go to different states or cities, it's hard to find hairdressers that want to stick with the task or have enough interest in what you're doing. I'm not saying they don't, but people will jump ship all the time. Like, oh, I got another offer to go over on this movie or whatever. And so their resume builds up, but they
haven't finished anything.
And that's not to say that goes for everybody, because there are great hairdressers on all of these places as well. I'm just talking about in big general swaths. So your circumstances were a very isolated circumstance. So you were lucky, so lucky. We don't offer that program here, like you said, in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel like there must be just a lot of people who working on non-union jobs, and a lot of those non-union jobs, they may be the only hairstylist on that job, and they don't have anybody to kind of work with or work off or learn from, and they're just kind of working it out themselves as they stumble along to figure it out. Then by the time they're in the union, some people think they've got it worked out and know what they're doing because they think they've worked it out. So they're like, I don't want to learn anymore. But then there's a whole bunch of people who are like, yes, now I'm in here. I can get to work with all of these other hairstylists and I can learn. But it's just such a shame that there's that wall that they have to kind of climb to get over to get to all of those people who can teach them.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the thing. When we, in 706, we got rid of that training program of where you are designated a journeyman or a trainee. And in order to be a journeyman, you would have to take the test, which was a very baseline of what was expected. I think it was very dated even when I took it. I would say that we do offer classes, I say we.
Yeah.
The union 706 does offer classes. I don't know how accessible they are to non-union hairstylists. I don't know
That's
if
the
they
thing.
are,
Yeah.
which is a shame. It's a shame because, there should be some classes that are offered or, a package, or they pay a certain amount or something to be able to be participatory. I think we should have some type of apprentice program on a set.
Yeah.
There are a lot of makeup artists that are able to bring on makeup PAs that come out of some of the makeup schools. And, I think that would be a great thing to explore for hairdressers, But I didn't have training that was formal. I did in a salon, but I learned by the seat of my pants,
Yeah. I think there's of course there's a certain amount of that is going to happen for everybody.
For sure. But you do need that moment where somebody then does show you something. Noriko Watanabe actually showed me with Peter Owen, how to work with his wigs. And without the expertise that Noriko showed me and that shared with me rather, and what Peter shared with me, not knowing me, but through the introduction of Noriko, I mean, that totally changed my game. That was Gangs of New York. So that changed my game for sure.
Yeah, it's priceless. I mean,
yeah, I'm always under the thing of like, whether it's a wig out of a box, whether that's, from Wilshire Wigs, or if you get a John Blake wig, which saves our asses like a gazillion times over on any given production, the ability to have John Blake wigs on hand, or wigs that Friends makes or something, like the ability to have these wigs, that we can either have a new front line made, a hairline made for, or we don't have time for. So you have to make it work. But I am under the belief and the analogy of working with those is the same as when I'm working with a Peter Owen wig or a Wig Maker Associates or Marcial Carnaval's wigs. You have to treat them. If you treat a great wig can look not good, and a bad wig can look pretty good. It depends on who's putting the wig on, how you're doing it. I don't mean like one, by name. I just mean by like how you are approaching it. And
I think there's definitely a hole in the system for some really decent wig training. I mean, if you speak to hairstylists, especially in Los Angeles, it's just like, what do you want to learn? It's probably African-American hair, barbering skills, and wig training. I would say are the three kind of top things of like, I'm not getting enough of knowing how to do these things. Right. And it might be because maybe they didn't work in a salon that had a lot of male clientele, so they didn't do a lot of men's grooming and, barber style haircutting, or they just have never touched a wig before. Yeah. So they're like, where do I start with this situation? And it's not something you learn at cosmetology school.
All those bits of information, right? And these are all the things that are training things, right? What about, like, to me, it's not just about like being able to do those things, right? I have a huge thing about like, why isn't a Vogue magazine cracked open on set? Why does someone not know who, Margiela is versus who, Dior is? Like, what's the difference? And who was Halston and who was, Piero Tossi? I mean, you just kind of want to educate yourself along the way as much as you can with a voracious appetite for whether it's an eye for the design or the color or the cuts or whatever. Take a subject matter that you like and expound on it over and above what you're doing with hair, because it informs it and it influences it and it inspires it, whether it's art or, fashion. But fashion and film, they're interlaced. And so for us to ignore that in film is to our detriment.
I know I'm guilty of it. I put my hand up. I'm terrible at that. And I just spoke to Kerry Warren the other day, hairstylist, and his advice for anyone getting into the industry was just research. And I was just like, yeah, it's true. And that made me think, yeah. And he's like, just, don't just look in the magazines, but get the fashion books and the, right. Really, and look at the history and look at the, and it's just like, yes, I'm guilty of not putting aside the time to really dive into that stuff.
Well, and you know what's
important.
It's super important. And you know what's really, he's Carrie, first of all, icon, right? I mean, just bow down. Carrie, like you just said, he said fashion books. And what's most poignant about that is that when a designer designs a silhouette of the clothing, the reason they are designing a hairstyle onto that drawing or have a say onto it or whatever is because that is part of the balance of the silhouette. So when we do a period film and you're dealing with like an 1880s, hairstyle versus an 1860s hairstyle, and you see like in 1860s, you see that low silhouette at the nape, you see that flat bosom, you see the really wide skirt, big. And then you go later and you see the silhouette becomes taller, the bustle comes around the back, everything's built really high, pile. It all goes with that silhouette. In the 20s, you get the little bob and the swinging and the flappers and the fringe of the dresses and everything in movement. They want the hair in movement, not frozen, just like the clothing.
Yeah.
And then, you go into the 50s and the tighter silhouette and the wiggle skirt. The butt is just like the head, it's like this curvy little silhouette and the butt is the same. And like, this is like, so in studying a fashion book, the relativity of the silhouette that the costume designer is doing, just like a designer in fashion, it's relative to the silhouette on the head and whether or not you're trying to throw the silhouette off that particular character because there's something off about them, or whether you're trying to balance it, or you're trying to like marry it or not, like whatever it is. If you're not informed, you're not going to understand the silhouette that the costume designer has just brought to you, because you have to work with the costume designer,
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. So if we go back to getting into that first full-time film that you did, how long after that was it until, I think, because it looks like you were doing some personal work and then you got into some head of department work.
Right.
How did that journey all go for you?
Well, basically, I did that film, didn't get into the union. And I want to say it's about 5 years till I get in the union from that point. And not for lack of trying, but basically every time I was on a film, I was a star request again and again and again. And then ultimately what happens is I'm on Truman Show with Jim Carrey and we're shooting in Florida, and the union knows that I haven't joined, and Paramount steps in and says they're going to shut it down unless you join the union. I'm like, I am happy to join the union, and they're ready to let me in.
Wow.
And it's a much more longer story that I won't.
It always is, lady. It always is.
In one weekend, it went from Friday, will I join, to me flying out of town and flying back in. And on Monday morning, we were shooting. And it was because I was now, properly in the union. Thank you, Paramount. And so, so from then on, I still continued. My work was as a personal star request. And often they would say, will you department head? And sometimes I said yes. And sometimes I said no, depending on many different things about it. So there's no blanket statement for that. But, it wasn't until later I had now remembering all this time, I don't have an agent. Okay. And then I ultimately get an agent. I'm like one of the first people in the business with an agent. And it's just that's another whole journey. Agent in film is what I want to say. Not an agent, because lots of people in fashion, including myself, had an agent, but.
Yeah.
anyways, yeah. So mostly it was like that. But then I had an agent who said to me, "No one's going to take you serious unless you're a department head." And I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" And somehow I fell for that, and which is stupid because it's so not true.
Well, I mean, looking at your resume, it looked like you were being taken seriously. I don't.
Yeah.
You're working on great stuff with fantastic talent. I don't. Yeah. Anywho, carry on.
I don't know. I think everything teaches you something. Each project.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the beauty of what we do is that each job has a different crew, and you get to meet so many new people and learn and have different experiences. It's awesome. Out of all these amazing things that you have worked on, do you have a career highlight thus far as the experience of shooting goes and like the creative side of things with characters and things like that? What stands out for you?
Well, so first of all, so many great experiences, and
yeah.
Really so lucky. And I don't know, somehow it just sneaks right up on you that all of a sudden, it's been so many years or so many films or whatever. And I don't know how it rolled into doing so many wigs, but did.
It's because you're amazing at what you do, Morgan. Your wig work is phenomenal.
I don't know.
So, word gets around.
I guess soon, soon the world will get out that everyone goes, oh yeah, there's a lot of people that do good wigs. Forget about Morgan. What do I want to say? Highs. Well, things that stand out to me. Well, first of all, I just want to say that, making movies for a long time, when you were going away on location, always so immersive. And in that, you really got to know the crew because you weren't using your phone all the time. We weren't on the phone all the time. ADs didn't ask you questions via text, and you weren't expected to answer the text, answer the emails, run the department, do sync on set, submit to some studio's continuity system, or and make sure everybody gets their turnaround and doesn't get meal penalties and has NDBs, and I mean it's just like the list goes on and on and on. And
so you used to be able to do hair, like just doing hair and
yeah, and you'd have a full, you'd have more people in the department, I felt, designated to different areas. It's important to have someone that runs the background room. It's important to have your key that helps you run things, and then your third who helps with the continuity, and also then that relationship with your fourth or the person that's running the background room. Kind of is just like a basic structure. But what I was getting to is it was so great to be on set and get to know everyone. You got to know the grips really well, the camera department really well, like every single part. So there was really a lot of great relationships. That's one thing that I kind of miss, which makes me sound really old, but that is the one part of the camaraderie of it all that is that becomes more constrained now, because we have so much separation and so much constraint on getting so many things done in one day and on a tighter schedule. But the things that are the highlights to me, for sure, Gangs of New York, for sure, the opportunity to, have the experience of, I'll tell you what, Cameron and I flew to New York, met with Marty at his offices in New York, Scorsese.
Yeah.
We got on a Concorde. Cameron says, why don't we fly to the wig maker together, and we'll go together. And that's what we did. We got on a Concorde. We flew to England, and we had a driver waiting who drove us over to Bristol, and we saw Peter, and then, we just had this great journey. And from the beginning, the things that Noriko shared with me on that job, and shooting at the stages that in Rome, Cinecittà just was Fellini's stages with Marty Scorsese, with some of the most incredible sets I think I've ever been on.
Wow, that's cool.
Just incredible. That is a real high point for me. Walk the Line is probably another high point for me, because the music and the performances and the designs that I did with for Reese's character, June Carter, it was really something special. And James Mangold was just It was great. It was just great. Going to set every day with that music was just a phenomenal experience. Those are two things that like stand out in my mind. And then, recently I did Mrs. America, which is running on FX for Hulu right now, as we have so many different formats. And the creativity level of that, of all these characters in wigs and their arc, and working with Rick Finlater, who is just such an incredible hairdresser in his own right and department head. And that's never the experience unless you're a personal, getting to work with somebody who's running a show, and someone certainly as phenomenal as Rick. And then of course, Carrie Warren being there. Like, it was just a great honor and really creative. So
that's true.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as actual projects, and well, God, wouldn't I be remiss if I didn't say anything about Bombshell? I mean, look what that certainly that panned out pretty good. That panned out pretty good.
Well, maybe we should touch on last award season, because you guys cleaned up. That was amazing. It was amazing. It was amazing to watch.
Oh, you were there. You were there, JL.
Oh yeah, no, but just
come on, you're part of the reason. I mean, we cleaned up. I might have got to hold.
We cleaned up.
I might have got to hold the statue, but woman, without you, like, it wouldn't have happened. And it was a very difficult job.
But also, I think there's so many people who are kind of curious about how award season works. Like, not everyone kind of gets into that realm of just this whirlwind that you seem to go through at that time of year, and especially being nominated for so many different awards for the same film, and just what that entails. And luckily it seemed, I could be wrong, but you seem to be available to actually participate in that whirlwind. I feel like if someone's working full time, that may be very difficult to actually really soak it up and enjoy it.
Yeah, it was. It's funny because
like a full-time job for you.
Yeah. I kind of treated it that way. I'll tell you, is that I had been lucky enough to have the experience of going through Emmy award season. I didn't get an Emmy, but was that for, I think it was for, this is so stupid. I think it's All the Way. I don't think we got nominated for True Detective, but I think it was All the Way. In fact, I know it was. Yeah, it was All the Way.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I kind of knew what that was. And HBO was very, supportive on that and whatever. And so that was good. But I hadn't done a lot of television. And so I felt a little bit like a fish out of water on that. Wasn't quite sure where I fell. And even though, blah, blah, blah. But it was a great, experience and, all that kind of thing. But this time, first of all, to be in the company with Kazu, who is a veteran of this, and certainly, class favorite, and rightfully so.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to be there with Vivian, who I have a long-standing relationship with, and I've known her a very long time. We met like way back on Sweet Home Alabama, and then later worked on Lemony Snicket. She was actually assisting Bill on that, and then I introduced her to Hillary for Amelia, and so we've had a long history.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
so that was cool. But Kazu was very busy, and Vivian was busy on a film that was starting up. And so they were intermittently available. And so there were times when I was doing things on my own. And then a lot of times we were clearly trying to do things all together. But I had just come off of Mrs. America and doing some reshoots for Top Gun, where I was doing Jennifer Connelly, just Jen. Oh, nice. And so I was feeling like super, super tired from 5 months in Toronto and a 2-year stretch with no break. And I thought, this is the perfect timing. It's Christmas, and I'll take a little time off. Not imagining what I was signing up for. I really
was about to happen.
Yeah. And, it was amazing. It was a whirlwind. It was a learning experience. It was never less than overwhelming and at any given moment. And I am so humbled, seriously, and so grateful for the experience. And it was like the company that we were in, everything. But it wasn't what I necessarily expected. And I'm not sure what I expected, because I never really had head game on for like, I want to get an Oscar here, you just do the best you can on any job, right? I mean, I don't think we were talking about that on the show, JL. Nope. We're just trying to do the best job.
We're too busy.
Too busy. Oh my God. Too busy. Yeah. But it was a whole thing. You do have to like rally up and be prepared and be rested and be thoughtful. And, sometimes you make missteps. There are moments where I was like, God, I meant to say this and I wanted to thank that person, or, and it's all happening so fast, and there's a lot of different demands.
I was going to say it's so much in such a little amount of time.
Yes.
And everyone wants a piece of you, I'm sure. They want to know everything and have a chat to you. And it must be absolutely exhausting.
It is. And have your bank account padded. Because no matter how many lovely gifts you get, it's never enough. You're still going to need more shoes. You're still going to need another dress, another outfit. You're going to need it just never ends. It's like the black hole of, you're like, I really, really want that new Celine bag. I didn't know that I was going to have to buy a gown.
Lady, you represented beautifully. You looked fantastic for all of it. I would be like, oh, what sweatpants am I going to wear to this one? No, maybe not that bad. But what sneakers? No, no, you looked amazing. I also wanted to touch on, as a designer and head of department, what are you looking for when you're putting a team together of hairstylists? What's important for you?
The first thing I look for is people that do things differently than I do. In what I want to say is that each person brings something to the table that is maybe my weaker links. So weaker, like my own weaknesses. I like the department to be filled with people that have diversity in the talents that they bring to the table. Yeah. I also look for people that are respectful of the way that I want to do, how I want to run the show, or how I want to do things, and respectful of that process. Because, I'm very handsy, and I'm not trying to, are you laughing at me? Did you laugh?
That's just the word handsy.
Well, yeah.
Could be taken the wrong way, lady. It just made me giggle.
Oh, yeah. Where's HR? Get brought up on some charges. No, I mean that. I believe it's a collaborative process, and there are certain makeup artists that I work with that are there is no threat to me saying something about makeup, just as there is none that I feel if they say something to me, in the sense of relativity. I'm not talking about somebody who's coming to try and tell you what to do. I'm talking about it being a collaborative process. So in my own department, if I say, oh, go make that person look like they just, they did their hair yesterday. They went to work. They went out. They got drunk. They woke up in the morning at somebody else's house. They threw their clothes on. They're at work. And now they're in the bathroom trying to fix themselves up. Okay. Yeah. So then I look at it and I say, okay, yeah, that's pretty good. But I do think, and I will, I will touch a hairdo. I'll be like, let's move that just a little bit more like this or that. Or I might just say, hey, can you just add some more, they fell in a puddle of dirt last night. You add some more dirt or something. I may say something, but I like people to just feel as though it's a collaborative process with me, because ultimately, if you're the department head, it's your overall schematic that you're trying to, have represented on the screen. And that's where it needs to be cohesive. It's not because somebody can't do a roller set that looks great. It's just maybe I wanted it to be bigger, or maybe I didn't articulate it well enough. I try.
Yeah. And it's just, I think as that team member, it's just, remembering that it's the designer's vision. You're trying to help that along the way, and to not take it personally, I think.
Yeah. And it may not be because you didn't do it right. It may have nothing to do with that. Maybe I've changed my mind, or maybe some other information came our way, or maybe it's not turning out in the way that I was like, oh yeah, maybe not such a good idea, huh? Like there is that. I can be totally wrong. And it's not to say somebody else can't do hair better than me, because maybe you do the wigs better than I do, or maybe you do a haircut better than I do, or maybe you can add wefts in better than I do. I don't know, any given number of things. Certainly anybody can be faster than me.
But there is nothing worse than if you're trying to explain, oh, could we just adjust this a little bit? And somebody, get their back up and storm off in a huff. It's just like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like, this is a team effort. Like, we're doing this together. Don't.
Yeah. And you just hope. Yeah. And you just hope that, you try and given no sleep or long hours or just whatever is happening in life or relationships with ADs or production or actors, like any number of things can affect so many things. And we're in this 5 by 20 foot trailer jammed in there day in, day out on 16, 17 hour work days very often, Yeah. And I think that you just hope that everybody communicates, and like if someone's feeling less than or feeling like they're treated less than, you want someone to be able to come to you and speak to you. But I do expect somebody to show up, and I mean show up by do the job, be communicative, and just be a team player. Like that's really
be able to go with the flow of how it all goes. Yeah, I think so. I think you learn pretty quickly in the industry that it is a team effort, and you've got to work well with others, or otherwise you're just in the wrong line of work.
Yeah, and by the way, what's my show this week? You could have another show in another 3 months, and it's your show, not my show. You know what I mean? It's just when someone's hired as a department head, you have to respect the fact that they've been hired as the department head because of what they had to say about the schematic of the look of the film when they met with the director and or the producer or, all the powers that be. So
that's a good thing to remember. Throughout your career, do you remember one piece of advice that really stuck with you?
The first thing that comes to mind is to never run. Now, I know that sounds like a funny thing, but an old makeup man told me. He said to me...
You mean physically?
Physically. He said, do not run, because if they see you run once, they will always have you run. And what that parlays into is not just don't run, but if you say that you need 5 days to get a wig ready, and I think you and I may have certainly spoken about this before, but if you need 5 days to get a wig ready, which to me is the bottom line, I don't see how you make something move and work well in less than 5 days. You can, but if you say that that's what you need, you say that to the wig maker, you say that to production, the actors know they have to come in for a fit, a follow fit, maybe another fit after that, just to get it right so that no one waits on the day because you've worked out the details. But the second production doesn't understand that's what you need. And I say 5 days, you might say you need 3 weeks, or you might say you just need 24 hours. But when you cut yourself short, which is just like running, when you cut yourself short, they will see that you then ran and got back there in 2 minutes versus the 10 minutes it was going to take for you to get in a van and have somebody drive you and get out and get that and get back in the van and drive right back. They will always ask you to do that. And that just exacerbates already a heightened sense of how you get the job done well, professionally, and in a way that you survive to the end of the show and you haven't killed yourself, by way of, you're so beaten up. So I just think that it's important to state what you need, and it's not to say to not help production. That's not my point on that. The point was to ask for what you need and to not, kill yourself trying to do it. Instead, just dedicate yourself to making sure it's done well.
Well, it's helping you help them, really, isn't it? I mean,
that's right. And problem solving,
Yeah. So that piece of advice that you were given, is that what in turn you would tell somebody else? That would be your advice to someone coming into the industry?
I would say to Well, I would say to research, yeah, I think what Carrie said is a really, really good point. I would say just to have the voracious appetite for learning, to understand that each film you're learning something, and each project you do, that you're never knowing everything. And it's good to have goals. It's good to be like, I want to run a department, but it's also important to understand that it's a constant learning process, and to always be eager to learn and to try somebody else's way. And, I think that's
absolutely.
It ties into his research. It's just all learning, voracious appetite for learning and keeping your bar high. Convince yourself that it's as good as it is. Like, if it doesn't look good to you, you know that it doesn't look good to other people. So.
Yes. I like to think like that anyway. Although there's times where I imagine you were probably told this as well, that you see things on a higher level than most everyone else. And it's like, that's not a bad thing at all.
It's not a bad thing.
As you say, it's keeping your bar high.
Yeah.
So all of those other people do think it looks
right. I mean, and you don't want to overly futz. That's the other thing. Sometimes somebody sits down in your chair, and what's the thing is, like, the hardest haircut is a blunt bob. Why? Because you don't understand. If you can't draw a straight line, you can't do a painting. If you can't cut a straight line, and I don't mean that in the most elementary way, I mean it is the hardest haircut, is to make a bob swing and fall and look beautiful in all of its movement. So it's like the baseline is the most important line. And if you pull yourself back and you don't overly like, you can futz with things, but you gotta know when you gotta stop. Sometimes it takes somebody else saying, okay, you got to stop.
Lady, that's what used to happen to me. I used to go to hairdressing competitions, and my boss would stand behind me in the mirror for the first couple of competitions I went into, and she would do that signal, hand across the throat, like, that's it, stop, like walk away. Yeah. Because she knew that where I was lacking was that I kept fussing, because I was like, oh, I've still got time. I'm just going to keep faffing with it. And she's like, no, you'll go too far.
That's right.
And she would stand behind me, and it taught me so much of just like, no, walk away. It's done. Yeah. It's good. Step away from it.
Yeah, it is good. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with, like, I will constantly, like, I get to set and I'll be like, JL, can you look at that? Does that look okay? Does that look weird? Is that working? And you might be like, yeah, it looks pretty good, but the nape looks a little funny. Yeah, see, I knew the nape was funny. Let me go in there. Like, sometimes you just need it. And sometimes they just got to get them out of the trailer, and you can let the wig or the hairdo fall into place better, and look more real. And
it's just stepping away from it. Yeah, because you can be so right up in its face, and you're just like, oh, I don't know. Step away from it for 5 minutes and look at it again, and you're like, oh,
that's right.
No, we're good. Or, just as you were saying, oh, no, I can see what it is now. I can see the problem. It's just being able to step back. Yeah. And I think sometimes you're not thinking that while you're in it, and it's just a good thing to remember.
Yeah, hard to do, but definitely a good it's good advice.
I wanted to ask you, who would you like to hear interviewed on the podcast?
Well, we know that you told me you were going to ask me this question, but I did. There are these are the people that come to mind. One, I think we talk about. Well, first of all, I think Kay Giorgio is like such a phenomenal hairdresser.
Yeah,
incredible. I would love to hear from Kay Giorgio.
She just do West Side Story?
Yes, she did.
Yeah. So I think maybe when that comes out, we could have a lengthy chat about that situation.
Yeah, they released some press photos I had seen, but Kay is just incredible. A fellow nominee this year during the season, because she did the Joker.
Joker, yeah.
She's just amazing. But the Kathy Blondell, I mean, it's all about Kathy Blondell for me. Like, I just think she's one of the most phenomenal hairdressers and has contributed so greatly to my personal like influences when I look at films that, and you know, when you talk about everything from Private Benjamin to The Revenant with Leonardo, Private Benjamin as Goldie Hawn's hairdresser and The Revenant as Leonardo's, and the gamut and everything she's done in between. It's just mind blowing. And she's an incredible person, the most humble and so lovely, has so much to teach. And she's amazing. Those are my two like hairdressers out of the gate that I just think are amazing. And God, what about Peter Owen as a wig maker? I mean, look, my list could go on and on, but those are the people that come to mind.
But yeah, I think we need to speak to some wig makers. I think that would be amazing.
Peter Owen, pure entertainment. Get Peter Owen on there. He's amazing.
It's awesome. Morgan, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's been so awesome chatting with you.
Thank you, Jamie. It's really sweet. It's nice of you to ask me. I think it's really cool that you're doing that because I think that there's a lot out there about makeup. And so I hope that there's some interesting bits of information that maybe somebody will find some little nugget in there. And thank you so much for asking me.
You're welcome. Okay, Last Looks crew, thanks for listening. And remember, if you love it, share it. A quick scroll down and you'll find our show notes. Or maybe you'd like to give your support and leave a 5-star review. Go on, I know you want to. Search the Last Looks podcast on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, whichever one tickles your fancy. And a massive shout out to the husband, Brett Stanley. Without his patience and tech support, this whole podcast situation simply does not happen. And cheers to Liliana Rose for her fabulous voice acting talents. Okay, Last Looks crew, that's a wrap for me. I don't need to be told twice to get out of here, so bye. I'll catch you on the flip side.
That's a wrap, people.